My name is Lily. I am 27 years old now. But when I was 19, I met someone who changed everything for me. I was shy and quiet. He was kind and bright. His name was Adam, and he was my first love. We met during our first year at university in the fall. I studied English literature. He studied business and economics. One day, I spilled my papers on the staircase. Adam bent down and helped me gather them. He smiled and said, "You should be more careful." I felt my cheeks warm, but I smiled back. It was a small moment, but it felt important. I couldn't stop thinking of him that entire day. Soon after, we learned we had one class together on Tuesday mornings. I arrived early and found him sitting in the front row. He waved at me when I entered. I waved back, feeling nervous but happy. He asked, "How are you today?" I said, "Good, thank you." Then he added, "Ready for class?" I replied, "Yes," even though my heart was beating fast. After class, he invited me to the campus cafe. I drank tea. He had coffee. We sat quietly at first, just smiling. Then we began to talk. I told him about my family and my dreams of being a teacher. He talked about his dreams of starting a small business. He said, "I want to help people and make something of my own." That moment felt gentle and real. We talked until the cafe closed. Day by day, we drew closer. We studied together in the library every Wednesday afternoon. Sometimes we shared sandwiches. He asked, "Do you want to start a study group?" I said yes, excited. We invited 2 classmates and met every week. I loved seeing him smile when he explained his ideas. I loved how he listened when I shared a poem. I felt seen and heard. One chilly October evening, we walked together after campus. The street lamps lit our way, and the leaves felt crisp under our feet. He looked at me and said, "Lily, I think you are special." My heart felt heavy and light at the same time. I smiled and whispered, "I feel the same." Then he held my hand. It felt like home. Once the leaves turned red and gold, we spent many afternoons on a nearby bench. The sun was warm, but the air was cool. We shared stories of our childhoods. He told me how he grew up in a small house with his parents. I told him about my sister and our old cat at home. We laughed about silly things. We created moments that felt timeless. He began to surprise me with small gifts. One day, it was a flower from the campus garden. Another day, it was a bookmark for my books. He said, "This made me think of you." I held the things close to my heart. I started to write little notes too. I left one in his bag saying, "You make me smile." He found it and winked. We laughed softly. Our friendship became love. One night, after a study session, he walked me home under the stars. I felt calm and safe. He stopped and looked into my eyes. He softly said, "Lily, I like you. A lot." My heartbeat thundered. I said, "I like you too." We paused. Then he leaned in and kissed me. It was tender, simple, and filled with feeling. After that moment, everything changed beautifully. We held hands. We studied together more. We spent Sunday evenings watching movies in the student lounge. He picked funny comedies. I chose stories about life and hope. We held popcorn in our laps and giggled. I felt joy I had never felt before. Our love was new and sweet. I thought it would last. I imagined a future, a small apartment, quiet mornings, cups of tea, and conversations about our dreams. I imagined him laughing in our kitchen and me reading to our children. My mind soared with hope. Then came winter. The days grew short and the air felt cold. We studied more because of finals. We laughed less. but our hearts stayed warm. We exchanged messages late at night about our plans. He said, "This semester is hard." I said, "We are almost there." That thought kept me going, but I did not see the small things coming. Little changes in his voice, silent pauses, fewer messages. Sometimes I looked at him and wondered if he felt the same. I felt a small worry in my chest, but I pushed it away. I told myself, our love is real. In the last weeks of winter term, when the snow fell gently, I felt a shift. He was quieter. He was gentle but distant. One evening, he did not wait at the cafe after class. He did not smile when I arrived. I asked, "Are you okay?" He said quietly, "Yes." It was not the same yes as before. I tried to smile, but my heart felt small. These small changes stood out more than I wanted. The love I believed in felt frostbitten. I started to ask questions I did not want to ask. I wondered if our first love would last. I did not know what was happening. I feared the worst but hoped for the best. Still, I held on. Each day, I held on to the way he looked at me on our first walk. I held on to the sound of his laugh in the library. I held on to the warmth of his hand in mine. Even as the frost grew, I held on to these memories. I did not know our story would change, but I kept believing. Because it was love, and first love can make you believe anything. After the winter break, something felt different. I was excited to see Adam again, but he looked tired. His hug was short, and he didn't look into my eyes like before. I asked, "How was your break?" And he simply said, "Busy. A lot on my mind." I smiled and tried to stay close to him, but he felt far away. We still met for coffee, but he checked his phone more often. Sometimes, when I spoke, he seemed to be somewhere else. He smiled at me, but it was not the same smile. It didn't reach his eyes. I began to wonder if he still wanted to be with me, but I didn't ask yet. One day after class, I waited for him at the library. We were supposed to study together, like we always did. But he didn't come. I waited for almost an hour. I sent him a message, but he didn't reply, until much later. He said, "Sorry, I forgot." Something came up. I said, "It's okay," but it wasn't. That night, I sat in my room and cried. I looked at the dried flower he gave me weeks ago. It was brown and quiet now, just like him. Later that week, I noticed him laughing with another girl. Her name was Mia. She was in his class and always stood close to him. I watched from a distance. He looked happy with her, and my heart felt heavy. I asked him once, "Who's that girl you talked to after class?" He said, "Just a classmate." His voice was calm, but his eyes didn't meet mine. I nodded, but deep down, I knew it was more than that. Something had changed between us. We stopped going to the library together. He told me he was busy with group projects. I tried to believe him, but it hurt. I used to be part of his day. Now, I felt like a stranger standing outside his life. I wrote him a long message one evening. I told him I missed our talks, our laughs, and our quiet walks. I told him I still cared for him. I waited for his reply all night. He didn't answer until the next evening. His message was short. He wrote, "I'm sorry, Lily. I think we need space." I stared at those words for a long time. My heart dropped. 7 words ended everything we had built together. The next day at school, he didn't look at me. He sat on the other side of the room. When class ended, he left quickly. No smile, no goodbye. It felt like I had become invisible. Weeks passed like that. I tried to act normal around my friends. I studied hard and smiled when people spoke to me. But at night, I lay in bed thinking of him. I missed him more than I wanted to admit. Sometimes I saw him and Mia walking together. They looked close. I wondered if she made him laugh like I used to. I told myself not to care, but I did care. So much. One day, I saw them share a pair of earphones. They were walking side by side, listening to music. They looked happy. I stood behind a tree and watched them pass. I felt cold even though the sun was shining. That night, I sat down and wrote a letter to myself. I wrote, "You loved with all your heart. You gave your best." I told myself it was okay to feel pain. I reminded myself of my dreams. I ended with, "You will heal." The next morning, I went to the library by myself. I didn't sit in our usual spot. I chose a new seat near the window. I opened a new book and read in silence. For the first time in weeks, I felt a small sense of peace. I didn't expect to see Adam again. But 2 weeks later, he came to me after class. "Can we talk?" he asked. My heart jumped, but I said, "Okay." We walked to a quiet place near the trees. He looked at the ground and said, "I didn't mean to hurt you." I stayed quiet. Then he added, "I still care, but not the same way." I looked at him for a long time. I nodded slowly and said, "I know." He looked surprised, but I meant it. "Thank you." I said. "For what?" he asked. I answered, "For loving me, even if it didn't last." He gave a small nod and said, "You're a good person, Lily. You'll be okay." I smiled, even though it hurt. "Goodbye, Adam," I said softly. He walked away, and I stood there alone. But this time, I didn't cry. I let the wind touch my face. My first love was over, but my story wasn't. After Adam walked away, I stood there for a while. The air was cool, but I didn't feel it. I just stared at the sky, thinking about how quickly love can change. Just a few months ago, he held my hand and told me I was special. Now, he couldn't even look into my eyes for long. That evening, I walked home without music, without messages, and without hope. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Everything was still. My heart felt heavy, but there were no more tears. It was like my sadness had turned into silence. The days after that felt slow. I still went to class, still walked the same halls, but everything looked different. People laughed around me, but I didn't join in. I answered when someone spoke to me, but I didn't say much. One weekend, I went home to visit my parents. My mother looked at my face and said softly, "Something's wrong." I smiled and said, "I'm okay." But I wasn't. She hugged me tight, and I finally let myself cry again. Being home helped a little. I slept in my old room and walked around the garden. My dog followed me, and I talked to him like he could understand. I said, "He doesn't love me anymore," and the dog just stayed by my side. That comfort was small, but real. After a few days, I returned to school. I decided not to avoid Adam. If I saw him, I would look straight ahead and keep walking. I would not hide anymore. I told myself, "You already lost him. Don't lose yourself too." It wasn't easy. I still felt pain every time I saw him. He was often with Mia now. They walked together between classes. Once, I saw him touch her shoulder and laugh. I looked away quickly, but it hurt. I stopped going to the cafe where we had our first coffee. I stopped reading the book he once gave me. I packed it away in a box with other small things, the flower, the notes, the photos. I didn't throw them away. I just wasn't ready yet. One morning, my friend Anna sat beside me in class and said, "You look better." I smiled. It wasn't a big smile, but it was real. She didn't ask too many questions. She just gave me a chocolate and said, "You'll be fine." That small act meant more than she knew. I started walking alone in the park again. At first, it made me sad, but over time, the quiet helped me think. I watched the leaves fall, the clouds move, and the wind play with my hair. I thought about what I wanted, what I needed, who I was without Adam. I began to write in my notebook again. I wrote about my feelings, my memories, my pain, but I also wrote about my hopes. I wrote, "I want to be strong." I wrote, "I still believe in love, but next time I will protect my heart." One evening, I stayed in the library until it closed. I was reading quietly when someone came and sat near me. I looked up. It was Adam. My heart jumped. I didn't expect to see him there alone. He looked at me for a second and said, "Hi." I said, "Hi." Then I looked back at my book. He sat quietly for a while. Then he said, "I just wanted to say sorry again." I didn't answer. I didn't have the energy for that anymore. He added, "You were good to me." I didn't deserve it. I closed my book and stood up. I looked at him and said, "You didn't have to deserve it. You just had to respect it." Then I walked away, calmly. I didn't cry this time. I didn't look back. That night, I felt different. Not happy, but free. I had finally said what I needed to say. I knew he heard me. I knew he understood, even if he didn't answer. And that was enough for me. The next morning, I woke up and made tea. I looked out the window and saw the sun rise. The sky was orange and soft. I took a deep breath. I whispered to myself, "This is a new day." I didn't know what the future would hold. Maybe I would meet someone new. Maybe not. But for the first time in months, I wasn't afraid to be alone. I was still hurt, but I wasn't broken. I still had my dreams. I still had my words, my notebook, and my kind heart. And one day, someone would see all of that and stay. Spring came slowly. The air grew warmer, and trees began to blossom again. I walked to my classes, holding my books and my thoughts. Sometimes I passed places where Adam and I used to sit. The memories still came, but they didn't hurt as much anymore. I was different now. Not completely healed, but stronger. I had learned how to carry my sadness without letting it break me. I smiled more, laughed again, and even found joy in small things. I didn't think about Adam every day anymore. One weekend, I joined a small writing group. It met in the library every Saturday morning. The group was quiet but kind. We read stories and gave each other advice. I began to write more often about life, about heartbreak, about hope. In one of my stories, I wrote about a girl who loved someone deeply and then lost him. She thought she would never smile again. But little by little, she found herself. Her pain became her power. When I read it out loud, my voice trembled, but everyone clapped. After the session, a boy from the group walked up to me. "That was beautiful," he said. His name was Daniel. He had kind eyes and a calm voice. "You made the pain feel real," he said, "but you also made it feel like it can pass." I smiled for real. It was the first time someone saw my words like that. Daniel and I talked after every session. He asked about my writing, my dreams, and my favorite books. I asked about his family and why he liked stories. We never spoke about past. Relationships. Maybe we both had our own stories, but we were gentle with each other. He didn't make my heart race the way Adam once did, but I felt safe with him. He didn't leave me waiting, didn't forget me, and didn't make me guess what he was feeling. That calmness felt new. It felt right. One sunny afternoon, Daniel invited me to a bookshop cafe near campus. We sat by the window, drinking tea and reading together. I looked at him, sitting across from me, and thought, maybe love can grow quietly. It doesn't always need fire. Sometimes it just needs peace. Around that time, I saw Mia walking alone. Her smile was gone. She passed me without a word. A part of me wanted to ask if she was okay, but I didn't. I only thought, we all learn in our own time. I didn't feel jealous anymore, just calm. One night, I opened the small box I had kept hidden under my bed. Inside were memories, a dry flower, a note from Adam, a photo of us. I picked each item up with care. Then I put them all back. I wasn't ready to throw them away, but I no longer needed them near me. Later that week, I wrote something new in my journal. I was his first love, but not his last, and he was mine. That part of my life is over, but it shaped who I am today. I looked at the words and smiled. They didn't make me cry anymore. I started saying yes to more things. I went for walks in new places. I met friends for lunch. I helped a girl in my class who was going through her own heartbreak. I told her, it won't feel like this forever. She asked, how do you know? I said, because I survived it too. I stopped checking Adam's social media. I no longer cared who he was with or what he was doing. My world had grown beyond him. He had been one part of my story, but not the whole book, and that made all the difference. One evening, I was walking through the park near the university. The sky was golden, and soft music played from a cafe nearby. Daniel joined me with 2 cups of tea. We sat on a bench watching the sunset. He didn't say much. Neither did I. But it felt enough. He looked at me and said, I'm glad we met. I smiled. Me too, I replied. And I meant it. There was no pressure, no promise, just presence. And that was more than I had hoped for. Before going to bed that night, I wrote a letter to my future self. You will love again, I wrote. But next time, you won't lose yourself. You'll hold your heart gently and only give it to someone who's ready to hold it back. I folded the paper and tucked it into my journal. On the last day of the semester, I walked through campus one last time. I stopped at the bench where Adam once kissed me. I touched the wood and smiled. Thank you for the good, I whispered. Then I turned and walked away. My first love didn't last, but it taught me more than I ever expected. It showed me that I could love deeply. And even more than that, it showed me that I could survive losing that love. Now I was not just a girl who had been left. I was a woman who had grown.